Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Senator Nick Miller. I represent parts of Lehigh and Northampton counties up in the Allentown, Lehigh Valley area. Thank you for joining us this morning. One of our key priorities here at the Senate Democratic Caucus is community safety and safe communities for all of our community members and our first responders, our police, our fire, our EMS. That's a priority and crucial piece to this. And so I just want to open us up today here on kind of who we have here on Zoom and with us. Senator Malone, our leader. Senator Costa is going to be joining us in about 15 minutes. We have Senator Carney on Zoom and Senator Kane as well. I want to turn it over to Senator Malone for some opening remarks. Thank you.
All right, just figuring out how to turn that on. Thank you. I'd like to start by welcoming all of this emergency service first responder recruitment discussion. Thank you to the responders and leaders who are here to share your perspective. As lawmakers, we can only do our job well if we know what our people need. I'm grateful for each of you being here today and taking time out of your busy schedules. I understand the value and sacrifice you make every day to keep our communities safe. Supporting you and all of our first responders as you continue to work is a top priority for me. I'd like to thank Senator Nick Miller and his office for pulling this important discussion together. As a policy chair of our caucus, Senator Miller does an excellent job of making sure we hear from the stakeholders impacted by legislation. I'm grateful he took the time to organize a discussion in Lancaster to hear directly from our police and fire department leaders. I'm also grateful to our State Commissioner Thomas Cook, Public Safety Specialist Jerry Ozarg, and other folks from across the state here to provide a broader context. Finally, I'd like to thank West Earl Township for hosting us in this great space. As Senator of the 36th District, I love to see us working together in Lancaster to connect the dots and support one another. As many of you know, not too long ago, I was mayor of East Petersburg. For those 8 years, I was also involved in the Lancaster County Mayors Association and the Pennsylvania State Mayors Association. Believe me when I say I understand how critical the work you do is. You fill countless gaps in our community when no one else can or is willing to stand. As a public official, I've made it my mission to bridge the gap between what people have and what they need. Growing up, I experienced that from a police officer named Sherman who lived next door to my family. He was able to identify that we were struggling with food insecurity at the time. He stepped in, helped my mother sign up for food assistance so that my brothers and I survived. When we talk about recruiting first responders, we're talking about empowering neighbors to take care of one another. We can never lose sight of that. During my time as mayor, constituents would come to me when they had fears of illegal activity, like drug rings in our community. These were situations where they knew there was an issue, but they didn't want to be involved personally. By working with our local police, we were able to get that resolved and give people peace of mind. Recently, we saw the value of our local firefighters and police officers working together to rescue folks during the flooding that hit Mount Joy area particularly hard. The Mount Joy Fire Department, assisted by many others in the region, did a fantastic job rescuing folks and responding to dozens of calls related to flooding. That sort of response is only possible with well-staffed departments, and that is what we're here to talk about today. Across several industries and sectors, we're seeing challenges with recruiting and retaining good talent. In Lancaster, we're fortunate to have a growing local economy. However, that means we have a tight labor market. People have opportunities and are busy, which makes recruitment that much more challenging. The leaders around these tables have done an excellent job stretching limited resources to keep our emergency services functioning and our communities safe. I'm eager to hear from all of you about the challenges and opportunities you face with recruitment. We're excited to learn how we can better support you and lawmakers and as lawmakers and empower your departments. Thanks again for joining us. I look forward to a productive discussion.
Thank you, Senator Malone, and Senator Casa for some opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Miller, and thanks Senator Malone for convening this very important conversation, very timely conversation. This is an issue that I think has been folks have been working on for a number of years across this Commonwealth. I had the opportunity to serve in the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Management Committee for a number of years. And in my background as a law enforcement officer in Allegheny County as a deputy sheriff for 5 years, I saw firsthand how important it was that we take steps to make sure that we make it, folks have the ability to participate in law enforcement and emergency response areas. I can tell you that challenges that we face right now, whether they be here in central Pennsylvania or back in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County where I represent, are the same. I can tell you that our local fire departments are struggling to maintain and get volunteers. Our local police agencies, our municipal police officers, the number of applicants that are now applying for positions is dramatically low. Sometimes in the single digits when you have 4 or 5 positions open. I'm hearing that there's maybe 7 or 8 people applying. That's a concern, and I think we have to take steps to make it more thoughtful and more appropriate for folks to want to be a part of law enforcement and also part of our emergency response, the activities that take place. So I'm pleased to be here today and wanted to make sure I participated in this conversation. I want to thank all the folks for their service who are here, our law enforcement folks, our emergency responders. Thank you for what you do. We oftentimes don't value it to the degree we should be, and we know the sacrifices that folks make and the risk that many of you take, whether it be entering a fire or whether entering or protecting citizens from folks who want to do harm, as we saw just recently in New York City where we lost a law enforcement officer. So thank you for your service, and I look forward to hearing more of the conversation today and finding ways in which we could build upon some of the things that we recommended in Senate Resolution 6 and other activities that we had a number of years ago, and what we can do going forward. So thank you, Chairman Miller, and thank you again, Senator Malone, for convening us here today.
Thank you, Senator Casa. And so with that, so our structure today is more a roundtable, so just more interactive dialogue instead of the typical pause hearing where you present and we ask questions. We want to encourage to kind of jump in and talk about specifics of what we can be doing. With that, I will kind of open it up. We'll go around and do some introductions for the folks that are here, and then I'll kick it over to the Commissioner. You can start us off with some of your thoughts, but Commissioner, we'll start with you, and then we kind of go around the room here.
Senator, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to listen and celebrate some of the successes as well as hear the challenges and try and map out a way that the Fire Commission can assist with recruiting first responders, firefighters, police, and even EMS personnel. It is a crisis across the Commonwealth. I've spent the 2 years I've been in office traveling and listening, and I hear the same story regardless of where I go in the Commonwealth. So looking forward to the discussion, and hopefully we can put a plan together to have some positive impact.
Hi, good morning. John Kopmeyer, Chief Fire Official for East Hemphill Township.
Daryl Kaiser, Chief of Garden Spot Fire Rescue, serving New Holland, east part of East Earl and Earl Township.
Good morning, Jerry Ozod, Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors.
Good morning, Chief Josh Kilgore with the Northern Lancaster County Regional Police Department.
I'm Chris McKim, Chief of the Ephrata Police Department. Senator Costa, good to hear a fellow Yinzer.
Well, thank you again for everybody joining. So we can kind of just jump right into it. Did we miss one more? Oh, I'm sorry.
Jamie Rohr, Chief of the East Petersburg Fire Department.
Thank you for being with us, Jamie. But thank you again for everybody, for being here and your service to our communities. Regardless of kind of like the topic, we can like zoom in from regionally specific challenges to statewide. I'll look to some of our police first. Any specifics around recruitment that you would want to see from the state that we could be working on?
You know, they say that leaders should always be quiet and let everybody else talk first, but I tend to be an opinionated guy, and I can't stand silence. It's interesting to me, this whole discussion on recruitment and retention, because I don't believe that it's a quick fix. This is something that has evolved over time, in my opinion. It's something that you can't just look at from a local level. I think when you do, you ask the question, why is there a problem? Because in our local level, we tend to have a lot of support from our local leaders and our communities, especially here in Lancaster County. I've always said we're so blessed to lead and work where we do because we have a supportive community. So I think that the problem is deeper than that. I think it's national. I think it has to do with society as a whole. If you look back to when we started police work, police were the heroes. All of our idols were heroes. The movies portrayed police departments and fire departments as the heroes, and young kids were attracted to that, and they wanted to be heroes. And over time, over the last 10 years especially, the police are now looked at as the villains. We're portrayed as the villains in the police department, we're portrayed as villains in the press, and young kids don't want to be the villain, they want to be the hero. And until you change that narrative, you're going to continue to have this problem. So how do you fix it? Well, one, it's going to take time. You got to start supporting the police department from a national level. Anytime we see these protests, et cetera, what has happened is the police stand there and they are the blunt of the aggression, and they're not allowed to take control. If you look at some of these scenarios, there's a lot of political issues where the officers are not allowed to do their job. They're discouraged from doing their job, and when they do, then they're crucified for it. So until that changes, you're constantly going to have a recruitment issue in our profession.
So perception, and I mean, do you see challenges around compensation or benefits, or is it really around like the career path choice?
Well, I think you got to ask the question, why do people want to be cops? Why do people want to do this job? For me and most of the officers that I know, we don't do this job for the money.
Right.
Because if you see what we see, you deal with what we deal with, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah.
So guys do this and girls do this for a purpose. I believe it's a God-given purpose to do what we do, and you want to help people. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. You want to be the hero. You want to be the guy that or girl that goes through the door to save people and make a difference. That's why people do this job. Yes, should they be compensated for it? Absolutely. I just had a conversation recently that the average citizen is willing to pay about $400 to go see Taylor Swift concert, but if you ask them to raise their taxes to help increase the efficiencies of the police department by $30, they'll go through the roof. So how do we change that mentality? I think we're taken for granted a lot until you need us, meaning the police and fire. So you have to change that concept and people's thinking and to understand the value of these people and what they do. The people that I work with every day, I'm so proud of them because I see the sacrifices that they make physically and mentally, and it's undervalued. And I think until you do this job, until you're the guy that has to go deal with some of the problems that our officers deal with, you'll never understand it because it's hard to be a reality to you. So it's something I'm passionate about. It's the only reason I'm still in the chair that I am, because I think these guys and gals need somebody to stand up on their behalf. It's not happening from our leadership at the top in the past, and we need to change that. And our local leaders need to change that, or you're going to have a bigger problem on your hand, because there's agencies out there, you can see it, where their government does not support the police department. They don't give them the tools. They're constantly putting them under scrutiny 24/7. And people, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to work in those conditions? And so you're seeing that. And we're seeing that. That's the reason we're sitting here.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some changes to support your police department and support your officers and to give them the resources and the time and the respect, and not crucify them with every little call, or you're not going to change the recruitment issue.
Yeah. And I mean, it's national, but it also starts at the local level of us
100%.
leaders and electeds being there with our police and firefighters and EMS and supporting them locally, and doing what we can to support them and making sure that they have the equipment, to your point, that
Yeah, and
they
it's
need, the
not
training.
it's not just monetary.
Yeah.
It's, when, you talk support, yeah, it's important, equipment's important, pay is important to make sure that they're, compensated fairly, that's important, but it goes beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's what the piece that we're missing. Everybody wants to immediately look at pay and benefits, and yeah, that's a factor, but it's minor in compared to real support from real leadership. That's what's missing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Senator Costa.
No, thank you. I mean, Chief, thank you. I think you're right on the mark. Thank you for your comments in that regard. You talk about the value and how in today's society, in many instances, our police in particular are not valued as they should be. And I think it does take leadership to be able to express that, but also folks like ourselves up here and others need to be mindful of that as we go forward and make the investments in terms of not just investments in resources and equipment and the like, but investment in recognizing and sharing the concern that the role needs to be valued more. And I think that's something we're committed to work to do. I'm thinking about here in my home community, in one of the neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, the South Side. Folks may not have seen this, but the crowd control issue and 3 o'clock in the morning, youths were sending fireworks into the group of police officers, harming some of the police officers to be able to push back on the crowd control issue and many other issues that have taken place in that regard. It starts young, quite frankly, because these were young kids, and we need to make certain that we do more. Maybe it's something we incorporate into our schools to have a better appreciation for the service that police officers provide. Though I do think, as it relates to on the scale of individual professions that are impacted with that, I think police officers, more so than, let's say, EMS or firefighters, are in some ways vilified. And I think that's something that has to change going forward. And I think we need to start with our young kids especially in figuring out ways to incorporate that conversation into our schools. I got a quick question, though, about your regional police department.
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been in a regional department?
Approximately 12 years.
Yeah, because I know we have one in the northern part of Allegheny County, the Northern Regional Group, and now we're also working one in the Mon Valley areas. I'm just curious to know, as it relates to recruitment, having a regional force that you have consistency across many municipalities and the like, has that been beneficial to you all and to being able to have the resources that you need from the local governments, but also having the ability to recruit folks who want to serve in your regional department as opposed to serving maybe in a local municipal police department?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And obviously, I'm a little biased because I am regional. But I have seen huge benefits from regionalization. Everything from cost containment. You're able to, instead of having one police station, for example, or multiples, you have one. So there's a lot of different ways in order to save money from a regional aspect. But from the recruiting and retention point, the bigger that you are and the more opportunity that you give your employees, the more attractive that you're going to be. Being a patrol officer on the street for a long period of time is daunting. Officers want opportunity and career development opportunity. They want to move out of patrol and move into a specialty and to learn a specific part of law enforcement that they can be a good asset to that agency. The bigger that you are, the more regional that you are, the more opportunity that you present. So you can have a detective division, you can have a drone, you can have bicycles, as the department grows and your resources grow, one, you become more effective as a police department, and number two, you give your employees more opportunity for career development. And that is a huge draw to a professional person wanting to get into a job. If there's limited places that you can go, it's going to be less attractive. So I'm not a fan of big government. However, I'm a huge fan of regionalization, especially for law enforcement, because I've seen many different benefits from it.
So last question. As it relates to the implementation of that, are there things that you saw as challenges that maybe we could implement to make it easier for other areas to begin to do a regionalization process? Because I come from a county that has 130 municipalities, right? Mm-hmm. I think we probably have 90 or so different police departments and out of 1.3 million people. So we're looking and trying to push regionalization. And it's not easy because I know that every municipality wants to keep their identity, to keep their police department, et cetera. But are there things we can do to help incentivize or make it easier or remove barriers to helping this happen in other areas as well? If you can think of some of those and let us know what they might be, that'd be much appreciated.
Well, the barriers that we all seem to have are exactly what you mentioned. People don't want to lose their individual identities, whether it's a town, whether it's a municipality. They enjoy some of the benefits of control over that particular area. When you regionalize, you have to be collaborative. You have to work with other people. You have to have some concessions now and then, and it might be something that you're not necessarily agree with. So you have to work together, and that's difficult. As we've seen in our government, working together with the opposite side of the fence can be very challenging, and it's the same thing in municipal. People are going to have different ideas. People are going to have different specific challenges to their areas that they want addressed, and sometimes they feel that if they can handle that themselves versus maybe collaborating with another agency that has a different identity. We cover 4 different jurisdictions, and each one of them has a unique identity to it. The people that live in those areas are different, and it's okay. So in order to be successful, you have to have collaborative people willing to work together to make it work. And if you do, it's a huge success. And I believe that we're a staple of that. I think we modeled a lot of our regional tactics and how we conduct business to York Regional. Pennsylvania is unique in the sense that we are the one state, I think, in the country that has these fractured police departments. I think we have like 1,500 to 1,600 police departments in Pennsylvania. So you have a lot of people doing a lot of different things different ways. If you can collaborate on those things and look at best practices and look at accreditation and look at professional police department and how you want to conduct yourself and do it the correct way, it's a huge benefit for everyone, especially the officers that are working at the agency.
Senator Costa, if I could add, I've had the benefit of living with the regional, first with Chief Steffen and then Chief Kilgore, and the officers and their commission have been really wonderful about how they interact with everybody and literally maintain everyone's autonomy to that and still managing collaboration. So at least for me, it's a great presentation of how regional really can work.
If I could speak to policy, you asked about policy. There's a couple of things that hold us back in Pennsylvania. One is the pension law. We love Act 600. I love Act 600. I'm sure Chief Kilgore does too. But it is not a portable pension. So any other state or many other states, you can take your time in service and move from one agency to another, which does 2 things. One, it creates a desire in the officer to be marketable, maintain good skills, and it also makes sure that the municipality is offering the opportunity, like the chief was saying, about in a department. So if you get a department of, say, a full-time department of 5 police officers, you're not going to have the same kind of an opportunity as you do in a regional department. However, after a certain amount of years, movement doesn't make sense because you're throwing away time towards your retirement. There was a good step in the right direction, the law that was passed where officers can buy back now. That was a step in the right direction, but it's not enough in my opinion. The other thing is, and the chief speaks to regional because he's biased to it. I speak to contract services because I'm biased to that. We serve 3 other municipalities through contract for services. Either way, it's a consolidation of policing. You have the economies of scale. The state has not supported consolidation in the form of contract services for a long time. The DCED used to offer grants, well, I know they do still offer grants for regional policing, for startup costs and that sort of thing. They won't do it for contract for services. The DCED report on regional police services in Pennsylvania up until 2001 used to publish all of the regional departments and all the consolidated departments and give it recognized that. At some point in the early 2000s, that report changed and the consolidated through contract services was no longer mentioned. So I think it serves the same purpose. There's some nuanced differences, but there's just simply no encouragement for a municipality to contract for services to consolidate because there's no help. Whereas with regional, they do help with grants and such. And please correct me, Chief, if I'm speaking. Okay. So those policy-wise, those are a couple of things that we could look at. I know that a statewide defined benefit pension is almost completely off the table, but maybe there are some places that we could look to change.
That's a great point, because the community I represent, they also do the contracted services as well. And it's almost like the council of governments, for example. I mean, they're not officially merged together as a regional department, but the shared services essentially. And I think that's something that I think we should be looking at. And I think it's important you're talking about that the contracted services are not given the benefit of any type of incentive to encourage that. Because at the end of the day, it's the same collaborative that's taking place, and it helps you address the issues of identity in the communities as well. So that's a great point. Thank you.
The chief mentioned effectiveness of your department. So where the rubber meets the road, if you have the small department, for instance, before West Earl contracted to Akron here, Akron had 5 police officers, maybe 6. So the crimes are the same kind of crimes. You get a burglary, and there's evidence, your items that were stolen show up at a pawn shop 3 townships away, up at Reading, Lancaster, something like that. You can't investigate it because there's nobody to go do that. The officer can't leave the jurisdiction to go down and do this investigation because an emergency could happen at any time. And they don't have the resources there's no detective in a 5-person police department. So it doesn't get done. It doesn't get investigated. So the citizen gets less service from the smaller agencies in that way.
Jerry, I was going to kind of your perspective on the statewide, as a statewide organization. Are you seeing the same challenges kind of across the Commonwealth?
Absolutely. The challenges that we're seeing in regards to recruitment and retention, it all varies because of the different demographics of Pennsylvania. Obviously, when you look at where you're from, the Lehigh Valley, the population is growing. Lancaster County, the population is growing. From Senator Costa's areas, the population is getting older. You go across the northern tier of Pennsylvania, the population is declining a little bit. And what that leads to is less people available to volunteer in some of those areas, to be firefighters or to be EMTs. However, also in the areas of growth of Pennsylvania, you see the fire departments and EMS used more and more. Their call volumes start to increase. You know, that sweet number of a volunteer fire company could remain a volunteer fire company if they run about 300 calls a year, okay? Anything more than that, when that pager is going off every day more and more and your volumes start to increase, that's when the stress starts in our volunteer organizations. So when you look at a statewide perspective, and I travel across the state, that's part of my role at PSATS, is to work with municipalities and EMS and fire departments to ensure that we are collaborating, because the majority of fire departments and EMS in Pennsylvania are separate nonprofit corporations, and they work independently from municipalities. And in the 1980s and early 1990s, everything was fine. That was working well. But as the demographics of Pennsylvania have changed, and as the economy has changed, and the cost of operations has changed, more and more of those organizations are relying on local government to assist in funding and support and things like that. And what the most important thing is that collaboration between those organizations. But very clear things that we're seeing across Pennsylvania. It is very common.
Yeah, and I've seen, at least in the Lehigh Valley, the challenges of needing the $1.4 million pumper truck in all these different municipalities, and they're right next to each other, and they may have mutual aid contracts, but that could be extremely straining on resources locally and on the state, and trying to figure out how we can, is it regionalization, having that conversation, but you do get into that, folks want their own fire department, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specifically.
Well, Chief Kilgore said it very well in regards to how people work together, and their ability to collaborate is essential when it comes to the future. And again, you hit it there, a ladder truck, and I'm sure the other fire chiefs are going to talk about that.
Right.
That's $2 million. A pumper truck, used to be 500. And so how that was bought, I'd say 10 years ago. So this is how it was bought. They'd go to the commissioner's office and get a 2% loan for 200,000. Then they'd go to their local bank and get a loan for 200,000. And then the fire company would then put $100,000 down on that from their 10 years of fundraising money.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Well, that economic model doesn't work anymore. Okay? And what that is driving, unfortunately, is we are going to see many volunteer fire companies that are never going to be able to purchase a new vehicle again. And they'll have to rely on, keeping their vehicles longer, working with other organizations. But the ability to collaborate, to sit down, that is essentially what's going to need to happen. Whatever that looks like. Multiple municipalities working together. Now, the Center for Rural Pennsylvania did a study a couple of years ago and talked about, how many volunteer fire companies cover multiple municipalities, and there's some data out in that. I think like 39% of the municipalities in Pennsylvania, there's one fire company, one municipality. And like somewhere around 25%, there's ones that are covering more than 6 and stuff like that. And that gets more complicated because you have boroughs, townships, and as the chief said very well, each one of those organizations has a different personality. But I can say one thing, that in a lot of the supervisors that I work with and the leaders in those organizations, they believe in making sure of having good public safety, having the right resources, and there's just differences of opinion in how we're going to get there. And that's why we focus on sitting down, getting people around the table and collaborating. And the resources that some of the things that you guys have done in the past, Act 172, that gives the local municipalities the opportunity to give volunteer tax credits. That's very popular across the state. That's done in multiple places. One of the things that I keep highlighting is in Southern York County. Those guys were able to get a county tax break, a municipal tax break, and a school district tax break, where an individual volunteer. Now again, that helps a certain demographic that owns property or pays in EIT. That helps. Those are the kind of broad policy things that I think are important.
You mentioned a study that was done looking at, because some of the challenges that, like geographically, you get just these large pieces of land that to cover all of it can be extremely challenging. What was that study, and did that cover anything about
it was done. It was a volunteer volunteer fire recruitment and retention study. It was I'd say 2019. Center for Rural Pennsylvania had a part of it, and they did 3 different articles on that. And it brought some good data in, and it was a historical study. They did it at, I think, 10 years prior and that, so they were able to kind of identify some of the challenges. But definitely it's also a mindset, too, that I've seen in those growth communities. You have to get ahead of it, have a recruitment and retention plan. That's very important. Commissioner's office does a good job at supporting those type of things. And in other communities, they struggle because of multiple people in the organizations holding multiple hats. We see some fire departments, the chief is also the treasurer, and the assistant chief also is the guy that takes care of the building. And when you have all those duties, it starts to get a little hard. But there's a lot of resources that we've done over the past 10 years. There's a lot of best practices out there, and it's just being able to share those across the Commonwealth.
Open up to any of our fire chiefs or other comments or questions. Good.
I guess we're blessed in my particular situation with multiple members that are able to volunteer, especially during the daytime. I have 3 stations, and basically have 3 businesses that support those. 2 of the businesses are actually fire truck repair shops. So, and I have a number of members that live in other municipalities but run with us during the daytime because their employers say, yeah, go ahead. That encouraging, you think about that, a business lets an employee go. I know the one business, and it's owned by the former fire chief, so he understands both sides of it. He pays his guys for that first hour, If they're out more than an hour, then they don't get paid, but he pays those guys. So he's taking a double hit in a sense, because he can't bill anybody for their time while they're on the fire scene, and yet he's paying them. Does he get any tax break or anything like that for what he's doing? No. That encouragement maybe from the municipalities and from the state could be helpful. And that you know, back to Jerry said, we're pushing that 600 calls a year, and it does sometimes, you know, and if you look at the statistics, I know Jamie was out all night, but the majority of calls are coming during the daytime when people are out moving around and doing things. And sometimes they're nuisance calls, but they have to be answered. Somebody smells gas leak, or a fire alarm, or something like that. Those things need to be addressed and answered, even though most of the time when you read the CAD notes, it's like, oh, this is BS in a sense, if I can be frank. So anyway, you mentioned recruitment. The commissioner's office, I know, has gotten, we push 14-year-olds involved. We get them in as juniors to get them excited about what we're doing. And that doesn't mean they can't play football or soccer or whatever school sport they're in. We'll let them go for that season, but we want to get them interested in serving. And we do the cadet camp. We have a cadet camp for ages 10 to 14 years old. We do every summer. I'm fortunate that I have an assistant chief that's a 5th grade teacher, and he runs the camp for us and does an excellent job. We were talking earlier, and again, this is where I'm blessed with manpower. We had our members give up 325 hours, vacation hours, that they burned vacation so they could be at the cadet camp. And the funny thing is, and then, again, my municipalities are a little bit different. I tell them that, and that just right over their head. They don't realize that. I mean, I value my vacation, the time off that I have for my paying job. This is not my paying job. In fact, my boss doesn't know that I'm here, so hopefully. Maybe I'll be looking for a paying job. But that needs to be recognized, and you know, I'll give one other example. I went to a borough council meeting one night, and the borough had bought the property right next to the borough building, and they had given it to us to train. And I was given my yearly report, and I thanked them for allowing us to train in the house. And I think, Senator Acosta, you said earlier about giving thanks or saying thank you for your service. You know, it's kind of a joke in the fire service when we hear that. Yeah, right. Although people don't know what more they can do, but it's taking the time. I said to the borough council, I said, it'd be great if you walk over and thank the guys for what they're doing. Not one borough council member walked over there after their meeting. You know, just that recognition and so on. So anyway, recognize. Here's I think where the problem comes, and it even goes back to what the police department had talked about. Municipalities for a long time know that we'll figure it out. I can ask for a new ladder truck, $2.3 million. It's on order right now. And, you know, we've been telling the municipalities this is coming. We ordered it last year. It's not to be delivered until 27. And it's needed. And we're out doing our part in getting sponsors and people to help support that. But when you ask for a commitment from them, they're not going to get any commitment. Well, we can't commit out that far. And they know that we'll figure it out. And so because they know that, they don't have to commit. And that's the unfortunate thing, that in a sense, thank you for your service, that service is taken for granted. Instead of, thank you for your service, and I'll support you in whatever way I need to because we need you.
Chief?
Yeah, we're kind of in a different scenario. Our township has two departments, two distinctly different departments in the sense that their response model is totally different. One is a home responder station, like the typical volunteer fire department, and the other one switched many years ago to like a live-in type model, where college students, in lieu of of paying for campus housing, anything like that, they would stay at the fire station, and they would have duties and respond to fire calls. Most notable, I was involved in an interview with one of the family members when they came to, they always want to discuss with you and come with their, the prospective member to talk about the program and what is expected of their son or daughter. And it was really interesting, and when they were talking, the parents were talking about, you want our child to do this, all of this, and they have to do all this training. And then the focus was, well, what happens if their grades start to fail in school? Well, they have to back off and those types of, that type of stuff. And long story short, they started to back away from it because they're like, hey, the focus is for them to get a college education and to graduate and get this degree. But if they fail classes, they have to repeat them. And is this really worth it? Is it better to just pay the housing and have them stay on campus? The call volume, in terms of what Jerry said, is absolutely correct. Like our call volume, I think ours is the second highest in Lancaster, next to Lancaster City, and it's a predominantly volunteer department. And again, when they were running 100 calls a year, it was easier to leave work. It was easier to come handle the calls and then go back to work. We're at over 700 calls a year. We actually had neighbors within the community of Hempfield Fire Department that actually asked us to turn off their fire siren. And that was kind of their quote, was like, hey, back when you ran 100 to 200 calls a year, it was okay. But 700 times a year, that's getting to be a little much. So we do have the call volume, which is definitely increasing. East Hempfield Township itself has grown, and with that comes a reflective, increase in services. The number of volunteers that we've had has definitely dwindled. Some of that is due to the call volume. We've added some part-time staff to fill in the gaps. It almost seems counterproductive in some ways, but at our one department, we're working to implement a daytime driver because a lot of them, they're home responders, and if they respond to the station and they get there and there's not a driver, they wasted time leaving and coming to the fire station. They can't get out in the fire truck anyway. If we provide them a driver, they can at least get out and do what they came to do. In terms of apparatus and costs, they're phenomenal. I actually just got the quote yesterday. We purchased 4 years ago, we purchased a pumper. It was a standard pumper. It was a spec demo pumper from a manufacturer. And we had one of ours that actually failed, so this was a replacement, and the township purchased it 100%. And I got a quote for that same pumper. If that was produced today, that was almost $430,000 more. So in 4 years, that same pumper is $430,000 more. I'm not sure how the volunteer fire service is ever going to continue to compete with that in the future. I really, really don't. So, I mean, we look at mergers and consolidations. You could look at it and say, well, let's merge this, and we have East Pete that has a rescue. Okay, well, you're going to be our rescue for our community. Well, now if we do that and they're the only rescue in the region, guess what's going to happen to their call volume? So now they're going to be running an awful lot. And then, and then it's a lot of commitment to them to cover for other municipalities, and then the other municipalities start looking at it saying, hey, our fire truck is coming into your community all this time. What are you going to do for us to, that kind of stuff. So it gets into that, and back to like Chief Kilgore said, with regionalization models, I definitely think that's the way to go because we're just not going to be able to sustain this. The cost of apparatus alone for boroughs and townships, smaller municipalities, there's really no way for us at the current model to keep up with this. It truly is not. So we have to figure out a better model, a better way of doing this. And it's not just continuing to buy and buy and buy. Hey, we have a ladder truck here, we have a ladder truck here. If we regionalize, that's a fair amount of ladder trucks for our region. In terms of recruitment and retention, you know, I've been in the fire service a long time, and I look at some of the things that we did when I first started out as a volunteer firefighter, and I'm looking at the model of that, and I look and I say, well, you know, we're doing some of the same things. We're going out and trying to recruit and do some of the same things the same way when I started. And I look at that and I look, you know, my own children, and I say, well, do my children do the same thing I did 50, 60 years ago? No, they don't. But we're using the same methodology to attract these people. So they're not into what maybe I was when I started out. So it's a totally different avenue. I sat down with some of the younger live-ins, and I said, you know, I asked them, I said, point blank, I want a frank conversation. Don't care what your answer is, just be very blunt with me. I said, if I wanted to keep you here for 5 years, like really keep you here in this area, what would it take to do that? And some of them were very frank and said money. They said, for me to come here going to college, it still costs me car insurance, it costs me gas, it costs me all, you know, all these different things, and they cited all the different examples. And they're like, you know, it's very difficult for us. You know, I don't live in the community, but I come here to college, so I got to have a car. I got to have, you know, I got to pay for all these things, and it costs me money to do this. So it's kind of a different, kind of a different era, a different time. And I think we need to look at some of the ways that we're using or thinking about for recruitment and retention. How do we keep these people?
Commissioner, are there any programs on the state level that help? I mean, we mentioned as young as 14 and in that high school range.
So as far as working with the young people, the commission has engaged with 28 school districts statewide promoting public safety training programs, whether it's through the CTC programs or actually as an academic program in the high school. That outreach has been very well received with the school district administrators. I think we're going to see more of those programs come into existence across the Commonwealth. The other thing that we're looking at with recruitment, as you heard just from this small group, recruiting public safety personnel is a very diverse problem. There is no silver bullet that is going to work everywhere in Pennsylvania. So our focus has been on where we identify departments that are having success. What's the secret recipe? And then how do we work with other departments to implement that program? If you go on our website, we have what we call the RIT kits, because of course, you know, in the fire service, we have to have fancy acronyms, right, for everything. But each one of those is one of those best practices in recruitment and retention, you know, so that we can give a menu, an a la carte menu to an organization head and say, okay, you know, and what people have to understand with recruitment, we can provide the support, right? So that the law with the tax breaks, everything that's been happening is building the snowball at the top of the ski slope. We just need the local chief to push the snowball down the hill, right? Because we can't do it from the state level. I can't go to the farmer's market in every community every Sunday morning with a fire truck to recruit firefighters. The local fire department has to do that. And that's one of the big indicators of successful recruiting is a fire department that's actively recruiting in their community. They don't just hang the help wanted sign in front of the fire station with a phone number and wait for people to call. That doesn't work anymore, right? And by the way, don't send the cranky old guy that's going to talk about how bad the fire department is to the farmer's market. You know, and I'm getting closer to that cranky old guy status. So I did want to mention one thing. Jerry brought up the Center for Rural Pennsylvania. I have not had a conversation yet. They just reached out at the end of last week. They're going to redo that study.
Okay.
Okay, so we will be fully engaged and cooperating with them on a new study here in the very near future.
If you could keep us kind of abreast on that
Yeah.
process, Senate Democrats.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, like the school district programs, is that because the school districts reached out to you or the fire chief, local fire chief, or how's that coordination work?
It's come a couple different ways. In the Danville area, we had a group of actually citizens that came together to, you know, push the fire department and the school district to establish a program. And that program has grown significantly over the 2 years that it's been implemented. We've had other areas where the school district administration reaches out to us and says, hey, what can we do to help the volunteer fire service? And we've had fire chiefs ask us to show up at the school board meeting to advocate, for the program, which, in all 3 cases, we will engage very heavily.
Commissioner, I think as you probably know, we in Allegheny County, our community college has a fire line program. Do other county community colleges or organizations around the Commonwealth have many of those? Because I think that's a good way to get folks into the mix, introduce them to what needs to be done in a way that is not cost prohibitive for them to be able to get to that point. Is that
So-
something we have throughout many counties across the Commonwealth?
I don't have the number at hand, Senator, but there are some that do and there are some that don't. It depends on where each community college administration places priority on their programs. It's the same with the community college funding model. About half of our training agencies in the Commonwealth are community colleges. Some of them have very well-funded public safety programs because the college administration places emphasis on supporting those programs. Some of them have very poor funding models for public safety training. So, we've been working, with the community college system. How do we support, I believe there's at least a co-sponsored memo, if not a bill, already starting. Senator Ferry introduced it to fund the community colleges. Great first step. Just like the tax bills that have already been passed, those are great first steps.
Do you find that model effective, though? Because I think maybe we need to do a better job of making a case that this is an effective way to recruit volunteers, and to whether degree we need additional training to be able to retain them as well. Do you find those programs effective?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
good.
Chairman, let me add something real quick about the school district model. Obviously, the secret of success that I've seen that the school district is approached collaboratively between all the different fire departments that are located in that school district and their elected officials. So I live in Cumberland County, Cumberland Valley School District. They started a public safety club, okay, which included the 911, law enforcement, EMS, fire, and it's like a 7-week, 1 night a week thing. It's not the full, and this was for 9th graders, I believe. And the way that got done was the 4 fire chiefs, the township supervisors, township commissioners, working with the school, members of the school board to encourage the administration. Because again, a lot of this is relationship based. And if there is not a relationship at all with the school district, and you have one fire chief coming to a public meeting saying they want this, it's really hard to get that off the ground.
Right.
But planning it out, having a vision, and getting those multiple partners together, I think there's been more success than just, because again, I hear that complaint a lot. Well, the school won't work with us on this.
Right.
Well, there's a way you approach that. And you guys know that, school directors are connected and you have relationships with them, and it's all relationship based, and starting simple to may move to something more extensive.
Just real quick, as everyone was talking about these, Chief Rohr, you and I had a discussion about how we could organize the grants and such to better help, specifically with volunteer fire companies. Can you share with us some of those outlines?
Absolutely. So I have currently, I'm the lead grant, our department's for a lead grant through the Assistance to Firefighters Grants, FEMA Act grant. We have a 3-year grant going for all but $1 million for 9 departments in Lancaster County. It's all but $1 million. It has helped us. I can tell you in 2024, we took in 18 new members. We're 8 members this year. Some of those new members have recently passed Firefighter 2. They got their notification this week. They're in Firefighter 1, they're vehicle rescue. I think the commissioners hit it on the head, is community outreach. I'm very fortunate that I have 2 people that are big into recruitment and retention, one being my daughter. I can tell you that my two female members have been and worked with Tracy at the State Fire Academy. They also sit on some of the committees up there, and there's things out there to do. Community outreach is where you need to be. I was very fortunate. We went down and helped Garden Spot Fire Rescue this year with their cadet camp, and I had 10 people go down to help with that because we do start at 14 in our program, and they see the need to get the younger members there. On Saturday, I have 8 people going to Lafayette Fire Department's cadet camp. One of the things that we've done, and I'm going to ask Senator Miller or Senator Costa, have you ever put a set of turnout gear on?
I have not.
Have you ever been in a building?
I did when I was doing my Act 120 training, but also in Allegheny County, we do have a program where the Pittsburgh Fire Department, conjunction with Mine Safety, do what they call Fire 101. And they invite legislators, they invite staff, and a bunch of other folks to come out to the Allegheny County Fire Academy and put on the gear and go inside and do the rescue and also do the fire stuff. So I've done it before, but it's daunting. I mean,
It's worth your time.
It really is, and enlightened me. You know, when you watch TV, you see these folks in these fire scenes. You don't think they're real, but they're real. And then so anyway, the answer is yes. I'm sorry.
So Senator Malone, I can tell you because I protect his house, his first due, and I could tell you that we put them through the paces. We took both East Petersburg Borough and I believe it was East Hempfield Township at that time. We put all their supervisors, said, come on, it's time. Maybe it's time you go to the State Fire Academy. You know, I know Deputy Commissioner Boyer would love to have you up there and put you through the paces and some of the adjunct instructors to see what we're actually going through. You know, part of our grant program is a stipend program for college education, higher reimbursement. Why can't that be looked at within this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? You know, we look at training, and I work for Commissioner Cook as a fire instructor at the same time. And it's hard enough to get people to go through, you know, but they're trying to make it a little bit easier for us to do these programs. You know, give some incentive there to do that type of thing. You know, some college tuition reimbursement. You know, I'm not sure what other programs you would do. You know, I love the $30 million grant program a year that Commissioner Cook and the Commonwealth has going. What does that get the average department right now? What is it, approximately $15,000 a department?
So on the fire side, the average award is about $16,000 a year. On the EMS side, the average award is about $12,000 for each agency that applies.
So think about that. Thermal imaging camera, $1,000. A set of turnout gear is $3,000 just for the coat and pants. You're probably looking $5,000. That's 3 sets of gear. How are we supposed to keep within, and you got to realize NFPA says every 10 years this turnout gear should be replaced. You know, those are the things that, you know, and the days of asking all our volunteers to go out and fundraise and do chicken barbecues and make $1,000, those days are over. You know, the people want to be with their community, be with their families and doing those things. I'm not picking on law enforcement because I work with Chief Kilgore all the time. He's our police chief, you know, but they don't have to come out beg for money and cook chicken barbecue to get the equipment they want. So why is it different? You know, 14 years old people, they're great. You can take them and start them in the beginning and work through. And once they get a little bit of the emergency services in their blood, it catches on quick. I give credit to the state association. What is it? The Pennsylvania State Firemen's Association, is it, Jerry, if I remember? They have a SAFER grant too, which is through FEMA, that they're giving out $5,000 grants for recruitment and retention. Doesn't take much to apply. It's a one-page application. Works great. You know, and we're in the process of, we just did a whole new recruitment booth. There'll be uniform shirts that say community outreach team on them, the whole bit. But it's, again, getting out in that community, talking to people. You know, the commissioner, and along with that, they're actually, the state, if you put in, they have a second part of their grant program that if members want to become EMTs, there's up to $1,000 for that. There's up to $1,000, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, $1,000 for them to get certified as a firefighter one. You know what? Those are the grants. And I'll be truthful, like we're saying, prices of apparatus, breathing apparatus. Ours are 14 years old. I think there's a very good chance that if it ever releases, that we have an AFG grant coming. But breathing apparatus is almost $300,000 for us. Those are the costs that are out there that you got to look at, you know. And again, the days of running chicken barbecues and that is over, you know. What about tax credits from the state for, you know, businesses that are letting their members go? You know, I'm a business owner, and, you know, if our people volunteer, we let them go, we donate. But again, what is the Commonwealth doing to help us? You know, the recruitment retention team that Commissioner Cook has going is great. You know, one of the big situations in the Commonwealth, and I'm sure the Commissioner will tell you, is instructors. After COVID, we lost instructors left and right. And, you know, kudos to the Fire Commissioner's office because they just did a separate instructor to put additional people on time. You know, I've already have, what, over 1,000 hours in, plus running, just teaching, and then plus running fire calls, helping with the day-to-day operations there, running my businesses, you know, so it's time. And probably the biggest thing when we meet with our new members for that, you got to tell them that family's first. And, you know, the family commitment and schools first. So you talk about the school districts, and we're told nowadays because of the, what is it, the core competencies that they have to teach in school, it's hard to get into the school districts anymore. Luckily, the school, what is it, the school safety officer, I believe it is a former police captain in Lancaster City. He's finally squeaking us in the door to try to get us back into the school districts. You know, we used to do a cadet camp too. And then how do you get that out to the kids? You do it through flyers through the school district. School district says, sorry, we can't do your flyers anymore. We asked the question why, and you know what we were told? Well, if we do it for you, we might have to do this for the KKK, and we can't say no, so we can't do your flyers anymore. So, you know, at the core of a municipality, or of the citizens in your area, is the school district. Those kids will take it home and run back to their dad and say, hey, we get to go see the fire truck tonight, but we can't hand out those items anymore. But I would highly encourage the senators to, you know, either go to your local municipality or work with Commissioner Cook and say, hey, we want to go see what firefighting is like. You know, they do it in the University of Maryland, or MIFRE, every year. They have a Senators and House of Representatives Day in Maryland. You know, I have friends that run in the Claymont Fire Department in Delaware, okay? They're live-ins there. You know what they get a month? They get a monthly stipend to buy food, help with their car insurance, clothing, and that type of thing. These are the things that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania needs to start looking at.
Well, it sounds like a challenge. I'll get to you in a second here, Chief. But I'm happy to do that. I'll reach out, and you know, I'm sure my staff would love to see me in that, looking in that equipment. But happy to do that. I think that's a good point. It's to be able to at least see what's going on in a very snapshot basis, and I'll commit to doing that. So
We'll drag them out to Pittsburgh to
Yeah,
do one with
yeah.
us. Because I got to tell you,
Yeah.
folks, when you go through that program, it's called Fire Ops 101. Ralph Securo, Pittsburgh Fire Chief, does it. his team, and Tim Leach, and those guys, I mean, it opens your eyes up, and folks have no idea what they're going through. And they also do other programs where they put the gear on, and you walk up, I think you walk up to U.S. Steel Building with the gear on. So it's a fundraiser, quite frankly, to walk up steps to see what it's like. So I think it's a good opportunity, and we'll make sure Nick comes out next year, and we'll bring James out too. So
Thanks, Senator.
So one other thing for you, and especially in recruitment and retention, and we've learned it through the commissioner's office with our teams working there, is diversity. It's a big thing. You got to have it within your department, and you got to embrace it. We rebranded last year and you can see the patch on my side that says one mission, one team, and that's where they're at. But currently, I have 11 females on our department. If you look up News 8, Channel 8 was there and did an article back in May. And I'll tell you what, they are some of the best people I've had that help bring this in, because they encourage other people and the encouragement's there. And when I'm talking diversity, I'm talking race, religion. I have people from the LGBTQ community in our department, and you know what? It's worked for us, and it's very impressive at the same time.
Yeah. I will say on the relationship side, and Jerry, you mentioned that, I think that's where you get to lean on your elected officials, especially, like, I can speak for my district, leveraging those relationships with the school districts and our fire chiefs, and making sure that they are having those conversations to see what's possible. You should be in our school districts helping out, train that. I looked at our police chief and what kind of programs we have for that high school range to get people excited about the career. Are there any out there that you're aware of?
That was a question that we answered a couple years ago. The SRO position is kind of popular in Pennsylvania as far as a school resource officer. I have some personal opinions in contrast to that. I firmly believe that police officers as a whole need to have a certain mentality, and they have to maintain that mentality. And if you're out of patrol division or out of doing that work for a certain amount of time, you will digress in that mentality. So it's extremely important that you stay on the top of your game at all times, so when the fire happens, or when the shooting happens, or when the crisis occurs, that you're able to perform at the highest level that you possibly can. So that requires training, and it requires, even more importantly, a mindset to be able to do the job. One of the programs that we started was called RCAT. So it's kind of corny, but it works. Regional Action Team that we started. And the purpose was to try and get our officers, all of our officers, not just one, but all of our officers into our school districts and into our schools, so that the students not only knew one face, but knew the uniform and knew the patch and knew that the officers that came into the school were there to help protect them, to be friends with them, to assimilate with the student body. We only started that 2 years ago. Corporal Wahlberger has done a fantastic job with us as far as promoting that. And we're seeing benefits from it. It's slow, but we're definitely seeing benefits. We've been in the schools more than we've ever been. Officers are starting to learn the layouts. Just this week and last week, we spent time at one of our middle schools actually doing training in the school, meeting with the staff, meeting with the principals. The students understand what we want to happen when we get in there. And the more that you interact with them and the more that you explain that from a police officer, the bigger relationship that you build, the more trust that you build. Now you start to become more efficient. So those are some of the things that we're trying. I'm not saying it's the answer, but we're giving it a try. And so far, we've had good results from it. Time will tell, but that's just to answer your question. That was one of the things that we started doing.
Who kind of drove that, like the local mayor, or borough officials, or was that from?
You're looking at them.
Yeah. And how do you balance it with officers within the school buildings while also balancing like the need in the community? How do you allocate the resources?
Sure. No, there's definitely an advantage to SROs. I'm talking to a lot of the teachers and school officials. They learn to trust that officer that's assigned there. This is a familiarity there. They can develop a relationship when they're there every day. So there's definitely some benefits to that. But we've seen across the country where you have a specific officer at the school for too long, and they become a teacher and they stop becoming a cop. And we've seen it over and over again. And I don't want to let that happen. I think it's important that officers maintain that mindset and that tactical ability to be able to run into a dangerous scene and not get comfortable. It's important that that happens. So I see the benefits to both sides, but that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Somewhat related, there's been this push or movement or discussion about when officers are responding to, let's say, a mental health crisis that's taken place, to having them assisted with, some person with a level of experience in de-escalation or whatever. Have you all experienced that, us, the police guys? And whether or not your folks find that beneficial, is that something, what are you hearing among your industry, so to speak, in terms of whether it's beneficial or not?
Sure. My stance on it is every time I hear the word de-escalation, I kind of cringe a little bit because it's something the cops have been doing for as long as I can remember. It just is now coined as a phrase to some sort of solution. Cops are trained in de-escalation from the time they go to the academy to the time they go on the job. They probably de-escalate situations every day that they're on the job. So it's nothing new, but we've coined this new term. Cops handle dangerous situations. Once that situation is stabilized, meaning it's under control, then I'm 100% on going beyond and looking for people with expertise to deal with the aftermath or with care or with preventable measures in order to help these individuals find the care and the help that they need. I'm 100% on board. As far as them responding to the incident with the officer, caution, because you're going to end up with some people that aren't trained to handle a crisis scenario at the beginning of it, before it's stabilized, and you could have put somebody in a dangerous situation that they're not prepared to handle. So again, that's why training is so crucial for our agencies. We cannot, and the chiefs kind of mentioned it, I'm a firm believer that we cannot lower standards in policing or firing or in any other profession. It's the opposite. You need to raise the standard. You need to hold higher expectations. You need to hold people accountable. The more you lower standards, and I know that there's police departments out there that have lowered standards in order to try and recruit people, is, in my opinion, a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. I believe that policing is a profession. It's not just a job. It takes a professional to be successful at this job. The more that we hold people accountable, the more that we demand more from our people, the more successful you're going to be and the more attractive you're going to be to true professionals. I have to disagree with the fire chief a little bit. When I think of diversity, I'm thinking of task. I want experts. I want people, I don't care what color they are, I don't care what sex they are. That doesn't mean anything to me. What I want is people who are capable. Expertise. Does somebody bring something to the table that can improve my team? If they can, wonderful. That's fantastic. One of the concepts that we've developed at our department is when we build our platoons out, as far as who's working, we look at the expertise and what value does that individual bring to our team. Same thing when we're hiring. What do you bring to the table to make us better? So we raise our standards. We're looking for people that are educated, that can write, that can communicate, that can have some expertise into mental health. What do you bring to the table to make us better? That's what we look for. Could care less about the personal attributes of the person, other than the fact that they have to be in shape. In other words, they have to meet the minimum standards of the state, be physically fit. If you're not physically fit in our job, my opinion is once you become a cop, you lose the right to be unfit. In order to help other people, you better be in shape to help people. That's what our job is. So I think we need to raise standards in policing. I know I kind of went out on a tangent there, but I think you get my point.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think because the job has changed, whether it's a police officer's job or a firefighter's position, or the nature of those positions aren't what they used to be, and what people think they are. And I think the training needs to continue on an ongoing basis. That goes towards the standards, and the high standards will need to be met. So I can't argue with that.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of expand on what I meant earlier, is policing, in my opinion, is a 24/7 job. So it's daunting. Yes, you work for 12 hours on your shift, but that doesn't include the time that you have to stay in shape. It doesn't include the time that you have to study to mentally prepare for the job. Still have to, it's all the time. And you have to maintain that mindset all the time. That is very difficult. I got the opportunity to train with some of the folks in the military. And one of the things that they said always stuck with me. They said they don't know how cops do it. Because when they go on a mission, they get on the airplane to go to wherever in the world, they're able to make that switch and reprioritize everything. And what I mean by that is when they leave, they cannot prioritize their family first. Because if they do, they won't enter certain situations. They won't put themselves in positions of potential death or harm. If your family's first, you're going to go home and take care of your family. Once they go overseas to a mission, they have to kind of mentally make that switch so that in order the guy beside them and their unit, all that becomes priority to accomplish the mission. In police work, guys do that every day. They have to wake up in the morning and go to work and make that switch in their mind that they're willing to run into the burning building or to the shots fired or to the school where there's an active shooter and put themselves at harm's way. They do it every day. In order to be proficient at that, you must be able to mentally overcome some of the dangers. You hear the adage all the time that if you have a crisis, everyone else is running out when the cops are running in. Well, that's not natural. It's not normal. You have to train yourself to be able to do that. And it's daunting. It's mentally daunting. We've seen mental health issues in policing has finally come to a head and recognized. It's something that was never talked about. But I think we need to do a better job as far as a law enforcement community to recognize that and educate our people on this is what's going to happen to you over the next 10 years. This is what's going to happen to you in 15 years. These are things that you need to do now to mitigate some of those effects so that you can remain effective throughout your whole career. And that's tough to do.
If I could touch on
yes.
Chief Kilgore and Senator Miller, you mentioned perception. We're not recruiting for an advisory board or a board of directors. We're not looking for people with 20 years of policing experience. We're looking for young people. We have to go where the young people are. And some of that's being happened, some of that's being talked about. But here's an actionable thing that somebody could do. Right now, commit to a 5-year positive ad campaign for emergency services and put it on Hulu, put it on Snapchat, put it on TikTok as long as it's still legal, put it on Spotify. Don't put it on WGAL. None of the kids watch WGAL. We do. We think that's where the news is. And no offense if WGAL's here, but they don't care. They're not looking at billboards. They're looking at their phone when they're going down the road. So go to where they are. If I could snap my fingers, that's what I'd love to see. Give me 10 years.
Social media.
It's got to be social media, and it can't be Facebook. They're not on Facebook anymore. My kids laugh at me when I send them stuff on Facebook. Dad, I don't read it. So we got to keep up with where they are. And right now, Hulu has regional programs, Spotify has regional ad capabilities, but it can't be some senator's staff doing it. You got to get a professional agency that does this for a living. And positive.
Is that statewide?
That's
state-
what, well,
right.
you have the resources. It's got to be a statewide thing because it's
Right.
going to be expensive.
Right.
It's almost along the lines, I know that in Western PA, there's the Constructors Association. They have created online gaming activities or gaming programs and other types of simulator type programs to simulate what the job of whether it be an operating engineer or a electrician or laborer, and they promote that in the ways you just talked about to try to recruit folks as well. So you're right on point in terms of going where the folks are you want to reach, but more importantly, giving them something that they're familiar with and they understand how to navigate with to be able to get an appreciation for whatever that role might be. So I think that's a great point.
That's an actual item that we'll definitely look into. And we did talk about perception and there's being leaders in our communities and attending a national night out and building our relationships, that kind of stuff. Is there anything else that we can be doing as a caucus across the state in our communities to kind of start chipping away at that perception challenge?
Camp Cadet of Lancaster County is a fantastic program that introduces their middle school age kids to policing in general. They tour the prison, they tour the State Police Academy. Anything that you can do to expand or improve that, there's not a lot of room for improvement, but to increase the attendance of that, because that makes a difference in kids' lives. It teaches them about teamwork, leadership, self-reliance, all that stuff. And those are the people we want.
Right. Yeah. I did the Pennsylvania State Police Camp Cadet as a kid. Yeah. Chief, any other thoughts on that perception challenge? What else we could be doing as electeds, whether here locally or across the state for our caucus?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, programs like Camp Cadet I think are great, like Chief mentioned. But why do kids want to go to the camps? Why are they being sent there? Are they being forced there? Are they volunteering? Do they want to be there? So you have to create that want. I'm a firm believer in it all starts at home. Starts with mom and dad. They're the ones that have to plant the seed. Not everybody is fortunate to have that, so sometimes first responders can fill that role, and stuff like Camp Cadet is an opportunity to do that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
For you.
Go ahead. Yes.
So you hear everyone talking about mental health issues, and the police going to mental health issues now. This past year we've had, what, 2 of them, I would say? We had the guy that held himself up in the house, set the house on fire. We had a person walk up to our door and say, I want to turn myself into the police department. Do they know you're there? No. He started getting very upset. I had a bunch of our younger members there that night, and he walked, once the Northern's officers got there, they said, what are you turning yourself? He says, I was told I was wanted for homicide. So afterwards, we took our group of younger members and said, if some senior members weren't here, how do you handle this? They didn't know. And that's where, we reached out to the police department, outstanding work. We actually trained our people in 3 different mental health classes on how to handle this. We put additional security measures in, but it's not just that, but it's the mental health of our first responders, police, EMS, fire. We got to be able to help them. And I know, listen to Chief Kilgore at Borough Council meetings, they've put programs in place. We have a program through Provident that any of our members, even their families, can call. But that's something maybe that the Commonwealth needs to look to put in place at the same time. And, I look at Commissioner Cook, we don't want to keep throwing more and more onto his plate at the same time, but, because I know what he does on a daily basis.
Commissioner, not to put you on the spot, but mental health and how we're addressing that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking at, and we're looking at it more from the recruitment and retention standpoint right now, the need for mental health support for emergency response personnel is very well documented, right? There's no question anymore that it needs to happen. But what we're looking at is how do we kind of lay the groundwork in the recruitment phase, because in some cases it does start, especially for us on the volunteer fire side, where we're so desperate for people, we'll take anybody. Well, are we bringing some of the wrong people into our organizations? And the term I use with my staff is resiliency starts with the individual, right? So again, how do we teach the fire chief, who's the recruiting officer, to identify the person that might be at higher risk, okay? And then we looked at a statewide EAP kind of program for first responders. You guys don't want to know what the bill will be. Because to set up a peer network with counselors and a call center that's 24/7, it gets very expensive. I don't remember the number, but I know there were a lot of zeros on the end of it. So, but if we can find a way to make it happen, yeah, it's definitely needed.
I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Is there anything we didn't cover that anybody wants to chime in? And I know we've got some other senators on Zoom. Would open up to any questions here, but here in the room, anything we haven't covered, topics? Seeing none. Senator Tartaglione joined as well. Senator Kane, Carney, any follow-up questions?
Hi, Senator Miller. Thanks for this. This was really helpful. I think you know that we've been, certainly Jerry knows, that we've been trying to push these public safety authorities bill as a way towards creating those senses, trying to create those economies of scale and create the things that work. Senator Kane and I are at Delaware County. We are, in the middle of a crisis right now with our EMS because we've lost 4 of our 6 hospitals, including almost 60% of our acute care ambulances. So it's a struggle kind of moving forward. We're kind of like ground zero for why regionalization needs to sort of happen and happen quicker. And I think I know the public safety authorities have never been popular, particularly with the professional firefighters. We've been trying to work the language so that we can actually accommodate that and say that the authorities can't actually hire people and they still need to stay through their divisions. But we're kind of ground zero in a bit of ways here in Delco, and just wondering if anybody had any comments about that. Thank you.
Anybody want to take that one? Jerry?
There's definitely different models that have occurred in Pennsylvania for sustainability of EMS. There's an authority in Lancaster County, a regional authority with 6 municipalities. There's one in Allegheny County that has 4 municipalities, and there's one been established in Indiana County that has, I'd say, 17 to 18 municipalities. And those are best driven at the local level on how to figure out bringing people together, identify the problem, develop the collaboration between those municipalities, and then move forward. And those are the challenges that happen when you bring multiple organizations together. Again, it comes down to that collaboration and the ability of everybody's philosophy. But if you set up a governing system the correct way, you come up with the governing system, and then the next step is you come up with what the funding formula looks like as early as possible, and what that cost is going to be to the parcel or the consumer or the business, and then publicly debate that and recognize that we're here to build a locally funded system that's going to be sustainable. And that's exactly what Delaware County needs. They need a system that's going to be sustainable, not a system that is going to, in 2 years we're going to be talking about this because 4 of the ambulance services are now bankrupt because they're covering everything. It's come into the long term of it. And in Allegheny County, Senator Costa is Ross Westview. Yeah. And they're a model. They're doing well. And the Lancaster County Mesa is doing things. At PSATS, we supported at our conference, we had 4 ambulance services that were highlighted. Mesa being one of them, Pocono Mountain Regional, which is 7 municipalities in the Pocono Mountains. The other one is Myersdale Community Ambulance, which is in Somerset County, where there was 9 municipalities, including boroughs and townships, that came together. And then the final one is Southern Chester County Advanced Life Support, and there's 17 municipalities on that. The key to success in all of those, where there was a mix of their governance system, where elected officials were on the boards of directors of those organizations, and number 2 is they agreed on a common funding formula that all of the partners placed municipal funding into the EMS system to keep it sustainable. EMS would continue to use their traditional methods of funding, meaning their the billing of insurance and membership programs and donations. So those successful ambulance services that we've seen have been able to diversify their revenue sources. They become a little bit better with their economies of scale. They have excellent leadership in regards to you've got the governance system, their board of directors. They have an excellent leader running the organization, their executive, and that they're publicly supported through community engagement. Because once a community loses its ambulance service, it is not going to come back. And what that leads to is other areas covering from a distance. And it's every week I get a call about a crisis in Pennsylvania, not a crisis, but EMS issues. And it regards of in the vast rural areas are struggling worse than some of the suburban areas. And there's so many different models in that. But I can assure you there are good people putting this together. There's good people talking about it at the local level. There is the model of the authority model. There's the nonprofit model with municipal contributions. There's the healthcare system model, and then there's the municipal model where municipalities actually own the ambulance service and paramedics. I think Penn Hills does that, Pittsburgh does that, Allentown does that, Bethlehem does that. But that's not for everybody. That's not for everybody. And there will never be a one-size-fits-all, but the Ambulance Association is engaged in that. The Department of Health has a piece of that. But it's one of those things that we never have to stop. We have to continue to work toward this because the situation, everyone needs an ambulance to show up when someone's having a problem. Pennsylvania is going to continue to have more people that are older, that need ambulances, that need systems, but it's our diversity sometimes is our challenge, but there are models to keep us sustainable. I'm clearly watching the Indiana County model, so we'll see how that all comes together because that's more of a larger scale, we're going to see more of those type of systems set up.
Thank you, Jerry.
Well, we're seeing it on the ground in real time right now in Delaware County. We have, various municipalities that are grouping together. I know we've had the folks from Lancaster in several times to talk with people about the process and what's going on. Almost everything you described, Jerry, is also, would exist under the authorities model as well, because the authorities model is really just a framework that the local people involved in it actually do the filling in and over governance and over fundraising, over the like. But what we're experiencing in Delco right now is that ambulances are currently responding, but once they respond, their drive time to get the help is 4 times what it used to be. And even that, what's even worse is their return time. They spend more time at the hospital waiting for a bed than they ever had to in the past. So that just means we have coverage, exactly what you're talking about. We're starting to get ambulances having to come from further and further away because other ambulances have responded and can't get back onto duty. So anyway, I think Delco is really ground zero right now for particularly around EMS.
Thank you, Senator Carney. Senator Kane for a quick question.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to thank all my colleagues that are on listening to this. As you just heard through Senator Carney, Delaware County, we're having a really rough time. But what I have is more comments, more so than anything. And to the men that are in the room, thank you for all the services that you provide and for your fellow employees and volunteers. Myself, I'm not a firefighter, but I appreciate the work that you guys do. I think the first time I got to actually see you guys in action was when a home across the street from me caught fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I hear in the middle of the winter time, the alarms going off and firefighters are out front fighting a fire, leaving their nice warm bed to go out there to save people's lives. So I've always been impressed with the fact that you guys are able to do that. I get to attend a lot of the anniversaries and yearly anniversaries to a lot of the firefighters in my area, and you hear the amount of calls that they have, and 400 to above calls out there, and you got guys my age, making 90% of the calls. It's amazing of what you do. But, going early on, I think it was Chief Kilgore had talked about changing the narrative about cops. you know, in the way that they're perceived. I have a son-in-law that's a cop, and I have this discussion so much with him because it's always being cops are the bad guys now. When the cops are the first people that you call, and then we get into the mental health issue when they go out on a call and a person's wielding a knife and coming at a cop. Well, the cop's safety is first, in my eye. But of course, we see images now from, you know, everybody's got a cell phone and everything's put on a video now. You only see one side of the story, and we see it all the time, and it's sickening to see. We have good cops, we have bad cops. I had good plumbers, I had bad plumbers. Training is the most essential thing. People have bad days. You know, you catch a person on a bad day and you're giving them back talk. It's not a safe place to be. I think about the mental health when, you know, our police and our EMTs and our firefighters, what you guys see day in and day out. You know, you go to a fire, you know, you go into a burning building, you're pulling bodies out, or you go to a car crash, or you go to a suicide. I mean, it's stuff, I couldn't live with that. I know me, I can't live with that. And I worry more about their mental health than I do about the people out there. Recruitment is extremely difficult. And like, I don't know who said it, but they said, you know, the training's going back to what you guys did 50 years ago. It's got to change. You know, how we go about it by social media, recruiting the kids. It's essential. I loved hearing the fact that, you know, individuals pay their employees to leave work to go, you know, fight a fire or do whatever they're doing, and they're being compensated by that employee. Yeah, there should be a tax credit for something like that, if you ask me. I also like the fact that, how do we do recruitment? All right, maybe we do have to pay. I'm willing to do that. I mean, we have to. Tim Carney and I are in a district right now where it's almost an emergency. When, you know, Tim already mentioned where I have Eddystone sending an ambulance into the city of Chester. Now Eddystone's without an ambulance when they need one. Now they got to go to Ridley to get an ambulance to go from Ridley into Eddystone, and then they have to travel 45 minutes to a hospital that's packed. So it's I appreciate the fact that we put this meeting together, Chairman. I appreciate the fact that you had a great crew of people in there being able to talk to us about things that we need to do and how we can help out. So I yield back to you. Thank you so much for having everybody here tonight.
Thank you, Senator Kane. And with that, I want to thank everybody for your time, not just here today, but for your efforts in our communities across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think we've learned a lot of notes here, whether it's positive ad campaigns to the non-portable pension system, looking into that, but just most importantly, building relationships within our community so that we can help connect the dots between different entities and community members. I think that's crucial here. Your organizations are the foundation of our communities, and we as a caucus want to be there to be supportive of that. So if there's any follow-up that you come across that you want to see or talk about further, you can reach us, whether it's Senator Malone here locally or us in Harrisburg. We're happy to be partners in this as we continue to address this. And Commissioner, thank you for being with us today. I'm also a co-prime on that Senator Ferry on the community college funding bill. This is something that's important for our caucus. Across the board, there's no silver bullet to this, and we really have to dedicate a lot of time and resources to figure this out because, no pun intended, but it's an emergency within our communities, making sure that you have the resources and the staff. And I see my staff already lining up to see me and the equipment already. They're messaging me right now, but this is important to us, and so willing to commit to being there in our communities. And This was recorded, so if there's anything that you want to follow up on or see again, it's on our website. And just want to thank everybody for your time today. Thank you. That concludes today's meeting. Thank you.